One of the signs of when a guy starts getting lost is when he starts to isolate himself. And it speaks to a deep level that says, this is what the Dominical family is about. We're about together. We're about saying no to other things so that we can say yes to the things that are going to make a difference, that build our family together.
Being a dad is one of the most rewarding roles we will ever have in our lives, but also can be one of the most overwhelming, where we find ourselves facing the pressures of juggling the demands of our family, careers, and life. This show will feature industry experts in mental health, social services, and personal development, along with resilient dad role models whose stories of overcoming the challenges of parenting get a new vision for the life you and your kids deserve. I'm your host, Pat DiDomenico, and this is the Resilient Dad Show. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Dad Show, where we'll be taking you on a journey of self-discovery, leadership, and guide you to prospering with a life of fulfillment. Today, we have the privilege of having our guest, Jeff Hamilton. Jeff is a pastor, coach, and consultant. Jeff and his family have had the privilege of serving families for the last 30 years in pastoral ministry. He's the founder of Dad Academy, a program created to encourage men and equip them to live purposeful lives. The role he loves the most is being a husband to Jamie and being a dad. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Man, Pat, thanks. I'm excited to be on here and to just partner with what you've been doing, the community that you've been building, the community that you've been serving, and I think it's so powerful because one of the signs of when a guy starts getting lost is when he starts to isolate himself, right? Because he begins to feel like he's the only one. And this community of men that you're serving, especially touching on the pulse of fatherhood and becoming the best man that you can be so that you can be the best example and for your children and the community that is built around it. Man, that kind of stuff is literally, no joke, the kind of stuff that changes the world. And so thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. And I love what you're doing at Dad Academy. And can you tell us a bit more about, how it all started? What was the journey that got you started to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, it started actually on March 1st, 1996, when I was handed a son with no instruction manual. And like being a dad's the only thing that men do without a plan, without training, without any type of like preparation or long time goal. We're mentioning before, part of the story that I tell is, I went to work for Starbucks in the little season of my life when I was just kind of hustling, making ends meet. And they made me go to Starbucks school for 30 hours just so I could press the brew button, the automatic brew button on the coffee maker. But on March 1st, 1996, they just handed me a baby. Right. And like my wife and I had done some classes that would help us understand kind of the first few weeks of what it is to be a parent, like to help them how to feeding schedules and sleeping schedules and all those kind of things to just help navigate that newness. But what I learned for that worked for maybe the first 3 years didn't work when they were 13 and didn't work when they were 23. And so I just wanted to see something that would resource dads in a practical way that went beyond just advice and ideas, but would help men develop a specific plan for becoming the dad that they dream of being. Because it's my conviction that guys feel the most successful when they know what's expected and they have a plan to accomplish it. And so Dad Academy was created actually in 2015. And once my daughter graduated from high school, I have a 27-year-old son who's married. He's about 26-year-old. He's about to be 27. I have a 24-year-old. And I waited until my kids graduated from high school before I put myself out there as a dad mentor, just because I wanted to see if what I did actually raised healthy, functioning adults. And so we started in 2015, and it was really just done like locally, wherever I could get a group of guys together. But like COVID, so many of us had the opportunity, the merging of technology in the season gave me the opportunity to put Dad Academy online. And through that, now we've served a couple thousand men, having them go through the training of becoming purposeful, intentional dads.
That's amazing. And it's profound, like you're saying, that you could get so much training when you start a career or a job, but when we start, parenthood, it's literally on the job training. Like, we're learning as we go, especially if we didn't have an amazing example or a father present in our life, which we were mentioning before, the statistics of what is the consequences of that, but the number of how high it is that a child doesn't necessarily have a father present in their life. And can you tell us a bit more about the challenges you see with the men that have, when they come to Dad Academy first, what's a common pattern that you see?
Well, let me step back and go to some of those statistics, because in the U.S., a full 1/4 of the population has never had a dad in the home, ever. And right now in the U.S., there's approximately 70 million men who are dads. And you put that number into consideration, we have almost 20 million men who have no model to go on. At least if you had a dad in the home, you're not completely clueless. You're either kind of repeating the good things that you learned, and you're reacting against the negative things that you saw. And, I'm not going to do that because I saw how that happened in my life. And that was kind of helpful. And you try to repeat those things. But in my everyday job as a pastor, where people come and they help process life, I'm telling you, guys, still their number one issue is unresolved issues with their father, whether it was they thought that they could never make their dad happy, or maybe their dad was never around and they didn't receive the kind of affirmation and the type of. So there is a huge, huge soul in most men's life when it comes to fathering. In fact, we have one whole session dedicated in Dad Academy to looking back at your family of origin and what there is there to build on in your life as a dad. But what's some of the baggage that we carry from our childhood and what we've been raised, because those things really do, in some cases, handicap us in a very significant way until we can acknowledge them and make the shifts and adjustments in their lives. And so the need for a strategy that would help us to both identify our weakness, but also I think most men underestimate their strengths. You wouldn't be a dad unless you had what was necessary to raise that child to become the best that they can be. The challenge is that most of us don't know what that looks like. We don't have a long range goal of what we want for our kids. And like I said, I waited till my kids were starting to move out of adolescence into adulthood to see if they were functioning, if they were healthy and confident and could approach life. And I'm happy to say that on the whole, that they are. And I think that community is important. I think that sharing the journey is important. But man, being a dad's the only thing we do without a plan. You and I were talking earlier about your background in construction, right? Imagine trying to build a home or an office building without architectural plans.
It'd be a disaster, a complete disaster.
But we're building lives.
Yeah.
Right? We are the general contractors who are building the next generation.
Yeah.
And so I want us to have a plan. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because, I watched in one of your content about when we're asked, what is it that we want for our kids? It's we want for them to have a better life than what we've had. But what is that exactly? What is the end destination? What is it what's the outcome that we're after for them? What's the, and I love that Dad Academy has an intentional and deliberate plan so that you have foresight of what it is you're actually working towards, and not just, I want something better, because it's like, well, I want more money and here's $1 and, that's it. You got more money, but that's not what you really want. What you want is there's a specific outcome, which, I think it's so critical to have that in mind when you're, having or setting these goals.
And the plan is adjustable for every stage that your kid goes through, right? Because what they need and require at 6 is different than they need and require at 12, which is different from what they need and require at 16 or 18. And I'm just telling you, even though my kids are adult, I never stopped being dad, because now what's cool is I get invited into their processes because I've shown myself to be a trusted advisor, and because I've equipped them with the skills and information that I have. Now, not only are they willing to take things on head on, but they're also not afraid to say when they don't know, and to go and find the information or the skills that they need to be able to tackle the next thing that they have in their lives. And so your plan as a dad will continue to grow and evolve with every stage that your children come. The thing that doesn't change is your mission as a dad and your values. And so that's what we say in Dad Academy, that your job, your responsibility as a dad is to pass on your skills and your values to your children.
And you're mentioning before that you've given or you've guided your children to have the confidence to be vulnerable and say that they don't know necessarily the answers to everything, but they'll seek them to find. Who were some of your role models that you had growing up for you to form, the behavior patterns and the person that you are now?
Well, thankfully, I was one of the beneficiaries. I grew up with my dad in my life, and he was a great dad. In fact, it was just a year ago, November, not related to COVID, just related to the natural process of aging, that he stepped from this life into the next one. And what's very interesting is that while I feel his absence, I don't feel a void, because I feel like he gave me everything that I needed to be successful and to be a man who can function on his own. And then through that, though, I've had coaches, I've had teachers, I've had people that I've encountered throughout my life, because I recognize the importance of having mentors and people and friends who are allowed to speak in my life. I think those roles in a man's life are really, really important. For example, in the U.S., you don't buy a house without a person who handles the real estate transaction, right? We hire a realtor. If I have a legal issue, who am I going to hire? Going to hire a lawyer, right? Yeah, if I'm trying to make a financial plan, I hire a financial planner. Today,
Yeah.
even though I could have done this, I'm glad that I finally reached this point. I had to have my dishwasher replaced. And while that's a pretty simple household task, it was one that I just didn't have time for today. So I was glad that there was somebody who had the skills to do for me what I didn't have time to do today. And I brought them into the house and paid them to install. So when you start thinking about life, think how many times we rely on people who bring specialty services into our life where we get to draw on their expertise. Well, I think we need to start thinking of ourselves as dads in that same kind of way, that as our kids grow, two things. One, we are going to invite people into our life, specialists who can help coach us or serve us in a particular area of need or a project that needs to be accomplished that we're trying to work on. For example, you're talking about this event you're going to next week. Perfect example of where we make space to invite somebody else in to give us perspective, to give us information that we need. And as a dad, I think it's also your responsibility to make sure your kids have those relational resources in their lives. That's one of the greatest joys of being a coach of adolescent young men. One of the things I get to do when I see parents is I get up and look for something to compliment them on for their kids so that they would realize that what they hope that they're sowing into their children, we don't often get to see the fruit of it as parents. Are my kids really what I see at home? I hope they're not like that in public. Well, I get to see these young men under pressure, where they're trying to perform, where they're trying to learn. And I get to affirm to some of these parents, hey, you've raised a good young man, and to be a part of that young man's success team.
Yeah. Even though my father wasn't present for majority of my life, I was very fortunate that because I was very active and into sports from a young age, I had a lot of great role models in coaches. And still to today, there's some that I still connect with 20 years later, that they've had such an impact in my life that relationship's still there in that respect, because of what they've been able to help me with. And not only with what we're working towards with, our sporting achievements, but also just in life. And it played such an important role in my life with not having, a father present, that I don't know necessarily what would have happened had I not had those mentors and those coaches. I definitely, go for it.
Yeah, on that, like one of the joys that I get to have right now in the situation that I'm at is I get to work with the entire athletic department at our entire school. And what we often say is that we are looking to build people, not to win championships. In fact, for like maybe what you and I shared in common, I don't coach women's sports. I primarily work with young men, but the women's coaches, they would say the same thing about the girls. I'm just going to use it specifically for the gender that I connect with. Our coaching mantra is that what we really do as coaches, we make men, and sports is our tool.
I love it. Definitely. It's such a great way to look at it, because making men, that's for life. And that's something that's going to impact them for the rest of their lives, and then also the lives of the people that they come across. And, the statistics that you mentioned before, there's, 20 million men in America that have never, ever had a father in the household. You were mentioning before an organization and a camp that you're a part of and run to help, support incarcerated, men with their children, and then be able to support their children. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how the things that you've seen there, and also the impact, and that great story that you're telling me?
Yeah, the importance of that young lady. Breaking that cycle is huge, because I never can say this word right. Recidivism, repeat, where it's recidivism. That's still not right. Somebody on your listeners is going to help me with figure out this word. But what that is that if a parent has been in prison, 85% of the children who have a parent in prison will go to prison themselves. It's just the model, right? And so what we try to do is we break that cycle of intergenerational incarceration by providing an opportunity for the kids to receive some mentors, to get outside of that kind of environment and to see a higher vision of what God would want for their lives. And after doing this for a few years, we're starting to see the first generations of kids who've come up through Camp Agape, the Camp Agape program, start to graduate from university. And they're the first people on either side of their families to ever do that.
Wow.
And then what's starting to happen is because the kids are being changed, the families are being changed and starting to take a different look at those kinds of things as well. But all that kind of comes back to the same role of, what an important role that parents play in the lives of their kids, and especially in the lives of children. The opportunity for success. If a child has a dad in his life, in his home specifically, he's 80% less likely to ever experience incarceration. So just having dad present in your life is one of the factors that help to keep a young person from going down that path. From statistics will show it's reduced drug addiction, it's reduced unwanted pregnancies, it's a greater percentage of kids who will pursue higher education, who are actually more one of the crazy statistics is that they are more articulate and clear in their thought-making process when dad is present from an early age. And so dads, if we have such a powerful influence on the lives of our kids, it would probably do good for us to be intentional about it.
And with the program, what are some of the transitional and transformative things that you see from men that go through Dad Academy from when they first begin to when they finish?
There's been kind of like 4 groups demographically that go through. One, there's a guy who's a newborn dad who has no clue kind of what's going on, but he wants to have a plan in place, and that is helpful for him, because then at least he starts to dream bigger about what kind of dad he wants to be. For a guy like you, who's kind of in the middle of it, right? Then it's really powerful because you get to control the environment with your kids, right? They kind of still do what you say. Yeah. They kind of respond to the opportunities that you have, and you get a lot of appropriate control of the kind of investment that you want to make in your children. When you're the parent of teenagers, now all of a sudden things start to shift, because now the kind of conversations and the time tend to be dictated by them, right? When they're available, when they're interested. And that's part of the natural transition. But we've also seen Dad Academy benefit and had a huge impact on grandfathers, because we start to see granddads that weren't maybe the dad that they wish that they could be, but now they get to speak into their grandchildren's life in a very intentional, purposeful way. And so with Dad Academy, the first 3 sessions are about you as a dad, your values. We really help men unpack values, which is a whole interesting conversation to have. The second session is about a dad's relationship with his children's mom. In an ideal world, obviously, every dad would be still married to his children's birth mom, but that's just not a reality. That's less than a third of any family unit that exists. And so navigating all of the relationships and all of the dynamics, you have to be able to have some skills on how to navigate that. The third session of Dad Academy is a dad looking at his family of origin. What's your background? What are some of the things that subconsciously are affecting your perspective on being a dad and how you even see yourself? So those first 3 sessions are about you kind of taking a deep dive, look in the mirror at who you are so that you can start to implement a plan for the 3 things that a dad does, which is help children develop courage, help children develop competency, and help children develop confidence. And courage is really courage is a heart issue. It's a character issue. And courage is about how children respond to risk. So you're the dad of younger elementary kids, and we can talk about competency and confidence in just a minute. But Chris, how have you developed? What's a circumstance that you can look back as a dad and say, "Oh, that's a situation where I helped my kids develop courage. Like they did something that maybe they weren't ready or didn't want to do, and then they found that they could be successful at it."
Yeah, I'm just thinking on the top of my head, even with my 4-year-old son, he loves Lego, and a lot of the Lego, sets that he gets are beyond his age bracket. They say he's 7 plus, whatever it may be. But I go through with him, and when he says it's too hard and it's too much, I slow it down, and we'll go, okay, let's look at the book again. Let's have a look. Does this look like that? Try and guide him and instill beliefs to him that he is capable, because he's persistent. And then he's like, oh, and he's happy, and I give him a high five after, and just anchor in that belief that, yep, you're able to achieve that thing that 2 minutes ago he thought was impossible.
And Dad coaches him through this.
Yeah. So I'm not. Otherwise, generally it would be like, I'll grab it, I'll do it, and then he believes he doesn't know how to do it because he's already put that in. That's his story now, that I can't do things that are challenging, and other people just do it for me. And
that's a skill that Dad passes on. That's correct. What a dad does. He helps. So we help our kids. I've taken away. Go ahead.
Yeah, continue. Sorry. No, go.
I was just going to say that that's such a powerful thing. We don't think about that developing courage, but that really develops character, because he's not going to be afraid to trace things new or to try things hard, because he knows he has the support that is necessary in his dad, that if he gets stuck, to help him go through. But Dad just saying, hey, you can do this. The picture I always have when I think about way that Dad builds courage and heart in a kid is the dad that's standing in the pool with his arms outstretched, encouraging this kid to jump, right? I'm telling you, whether they're 3 or whether they're 23, that's still what a dad does. Trust me, you can do this, right? So that's courage. Yeah. Competency is making sure that they have the skills that are necessary for life. And they're like experiential skills, learning how to do things, right? Experiential skill. That's teaching kid practical things like tying his shoes. That's probably not far off from where you're at as a dad, right? In fact, forgive my directness, but I mean, when you teach a kid, when you potty train a kid, you're giving him life skills, right? Correct. So it seems like we compile all these life skills when they're little, but we forget about how necessary those life skills are as they move on through life. And whatever a dad knows how to do, he needs to pass that on. But also, one of the first things we teach our children is to say things like please and thank you. And those are emotional intelligence. And those kind of soft people skills are also things that dad teaches a child to have in his life. And those skills go on throughout life. And a report says that 85% of an individual's success is based on their emotional intelligence or relational skills more so than their educational or experiential skills. And so a dad has to find learning how to keep your temper, learning how to deal with frustration, learning how to deal with fear. These are important tools that a dad gives his children to be able to navigate life successfully, right? And then the last one is confidence. And I think the confidence comes from a clear understanding of who you are. And those have to do with the rituals and traditions of your family. Like in your life, Chris, or Pat, what's a ritual that you have with your kids? You have a bedtime routine? Do you have a morning routine that you do? Do you read to them before they go to bed, or do you every day you guys go out on a walk? What are kind of like the daily things that you do as a dad, Pat, with your kids?
Definitely the evening reading them a book. They know if it's a certain time and I haven't read them a book yet, they come downstairs and they let me know, it's time to read a book. And my little one, who's nearly 2, he joins us now as well. He'll want to jump in the bed and read the book. And it's amazing how much of an influence it has on them from such a young age. Because like the other day, I went upstairs and I saw my 2-year-old, he doesn't know how to read, but he's sitting down with a book open and he's just flicking through, and obviously he's just observing the images. But that he's picked that up through the demonstration of we read books at night, and he sees that we're flicking through. So he's copying and he's modeling what we actually show as dads.
And it speaks to a deep level that says this is what the Dominico family is about. We're about together. We're about saying no to other things so that we can say yes to these, to the things that are going to make a difference, that build our family together. One day, one of the other rituals that I had was I never left the house if I was running an errand without grabbing one of my kids and putting them in the car. Now, they weren't always happy to do that, but more times than not, the conversations that we had, it spoke, when that ritual or that routine spoke to the kids that they can access dad anytime. You don't have to make an appointment, that he's going to make an investment into your life. And it builds that sense of self-confidence that they're not having to navigate things by themselves. And the traditions of your family. One of the big things in the Dad Academy dad plan that I make men do is your dad plan is not complete without scheduling a vacation. See, I think one of the biggest things that a dad does is make memories for his family, because nobody's going to really remember the water park that you went to, but they'll remember the water park because of the things that happened together at the water park. And it's creating space out of the norm for your family to bond, for you to make an investment of time and attention into them. And when kids feel valued by their dad, their sense of worth and their sense of value allows them to navigate through some of the difficult things that they face, maybe outside the home, with dealing with rejection or dealing with confrontation, that you can navigate through those hard things because you know who you are and where you came from. And so those 3 things, courage, competency, and confidence, are the 3 things that a dad really gives to his children. And in Dad Academy, we help you make a plan to be able to do just that.
And the bit that you touched on with, emotional intelligence, being able to pass that on to your kids, I didn't realize how much of an impact, even at such a young age, it makes or has on our kids. Wait a minute, why are they behaving in this certain way? Is it just because they're naughty kids, and wait, no, maybe I'm demonstrating some sort of form similar, and that's the way they believe that they need to behave to get the result that they're after. And that's one of the key things that I've really picked up in the last 18 months of how I behave in every situation really demonstrates to them, and models to them what is acceptable. Because if I'm going to fly off the handle, then they think that's okay, regardless of whether you think it's justified or not. That's what they will believe. That's how they engage with other people. So that's, I think, one of the most important parts for us to have as men, but also to pass on to our kids.
Also, there was a book recently that was a New York Times bestseller. I don't know if it's made it down under, but it was written by a U.S. Navy admiral, retired, and it was simply called "Make Your Bed." And he was talking about the small routines in our life that help us live with a sense of accomplishment. And he said, if you want to have a day that is successful, where you're achieving your goals, it begins by not leaving anything undone. You have to start something and finish it before you move on to your next thing. It's been a New York Times bestseller. And he says the key to achieving the simple things that you want in life is by completing the simple things that need to be done every single day. And I think that is true of being a dad. Like, you don't realize that. So when my kids started going to school, they were old enough to make their beds. I didn't expect them to make a bed the same way that I would when they're 10 or 15 years old. But starting when they were kindergarten, we had them make their bed. And to this day, they make their bed every single day, right? As adults.
Yeah.
Is it any big, could you live without making your bed? Probably. But it allows us to move through the process of I'm accomplishing things today. And this is part of my routine. And so now there's all types of things in their lives that they practice as adults that we actually started laying the groundwork for when they were 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting that first win, like you're saying, that accomplishment, and then knowing that you've succeeded at something. So then the next thing you attempt, you've already have that sense of, belief in that accomplishment, and being able to complete things and not just walk away. I think it's a very valuable lesson to pass on to your kids, that, we just don't give up, or we have the discipline. So,
and that you can do hard things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what are some of the key, for a dad that, that's listening, what are a couple of things that you could really say to them? These are the key things that you would say to focus on or do to be able to start making that shift and that change to becoming that dad that they want to be.
Well, I think we have maybe if you want to put a link on your site, we have a little download that I think is really, really helpful for dads. Comes out, kind of expresses kind of the heart and mission of Dad Academy. I think that there are 3 primary tasks or responsibilities that a dad has. The first one is to protect your children's purity. Kids grow up too fast, too early these days. With the advent of technology in their hands, as parents, we're all trying to find what is the right way to use this and the right way to what are the right ages to get our kids involved. I will tell you, the access to to pornography is epidemic around the world. And it ruins both men and women's sense of value and of worth and of significance, especially when they are exposed to it before there is a time. And it's not just protecting their purity in their sexual purity. I mean, really, we want our kids to remain as innocent as long as possible. I don't mean hidden, right? I don't mean like that we squirrel them away and we never expose them to anything. But we want them to be kids as long as possible, so they have opportunity to. There's so much research that talks about the value of play. There's so much information that talks about how reading and listening and playing music is better for you than being online watching YouTube clips. And I think oftentimes as parents, we default to whatever costs us the least energy, when really protecting our kids is protecting the purity and innocence of children is one of the things that also helps us move into the second thing, which is affirm their identity. Do they know who they are? Yeah. Do they know that they're loved? Do they know that they're believed in? Do they know that they have a community of support around them? Because all of us face these kinds of challenges. One of the biggest things I deal with men is because a man's primary need is to be respected and to be affirmed. We are always trying to prove our worth to somebody. We're always wanting to find admiration. We're always wanting to seek out respect. And I think if we can raise young men and women that know their worth and know their value and find affirmation from the people that are the most important in their lives, that they'll be less likely to fall prey to some of the predatory things that are outside that would want to strip them and rob them from that sense of self and that sense of purpose and destiny in their lives, which is the third thing: direct kids to our destiny. I think our goal in Dad Academy and our goal as dads is, man, we want our kids, like we said at the very beginning, what do you want for your kids? I don't want them to, I don't care if they're more financially successful than me or not. I don't care if they have a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger, I want them to know that they're loved. I want them to be people who are willing to love and willing to trust, who can live their lives sacrificially for the benefit of the greater good of the community that they're a part of. Because I find that if we will give our lives away, this is kind of one of these biblical principles. If we give our lives away, we're going to find the meaning of our lives in that kind of service. And so if we can move away, I had one of the men that's a part of Dad Academy said, I knew I finally became a man when I came to the realization that my life is not about me. And I think that if guys can learn to live that way and serve their families that way, we will end up with the end goal. Because I promise you, nobody, this is an old saying, old cliche, but I've sat there with people in the hospital rooms, people who saw the end of their physical life on the horizon, and none of them are wishing they had made better money investments. Nobody's wishing they spent more time at work. Nobody's wishing they had bought a bigger house. Nobody's wishing that they want to make sure that the thing that they gave their life to in their family and in relationships is how they'll be remembered. And so I think, guys, we need to live with that kind of perspective on our lives. And I hope that through Dad Academy, we're giving guys through these 7 sessions, just 15 minutes on video and doing it in a community, that it gives us something to think about our lives on a bigger picture, and then coming back into the micro. What are the day-to-day steps that I can take to get to the end results of what I want, of raising healthy, confident, competent, courageous kids?
Yeah. So men, dads, monitor what's coming in to your minds and your space, and also having that identity of knowing, having that self-confidence and not needing that external validation, as Jeff was mentioning, is such a critical part for us to have that anchor and that foundation for us, and then to be that example to our kids and know exactly what is it that you want and where you're going. So Jeff, really appreciate that. And where's the best place for our audience to reach out to you, on social media or your website, for them to connect?
Yeah, we've got it all. Probably the first place, if you just want to get a taste of the way we think at Dad Academy and some really practical things, follow us on social media. 2023, like everybody else, we've gotten really active on TikTok. So at Dad Academy. Much of that content is also replicated on Instagram at dad.academy. And then, check out everything that we have to offer at dadacademy.info. Dadacademy.info. And if you're interested in Dad Academy or forming a Dad Academy group, because this journey is you've created here at Resilient Dad, the journey of a community is so powerful, right? To be able to share the journey with. This is an online class that a couple of you guys can get together, get the workbooks, get the videos, 3 or 4 or 12 guys, make it a 7-week process where you're just given an hour a week, 15 minutes of video and 45 minutes to talk, right? About the journey of being a dad. And I promise you, it will change your family's destiny for good. So dadacademy.info. You can get the 3 responsibilities of a father checklist there with some practical tips, and see if Dad Academy is for you, because I really believe that if every dad will develop a plan, he'll have a way, a roadmap for how to be the kind of dad that he wants to be, to produce the kind of courageous, competent, confident kids that he hopes that they'll become.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much. And we'll drop the links in this episode as well for you guys to get some of that content and then reach out to Jeff as well. So, Jeff, thank you for your time and also, what you've been doing to contribute to the world to make it a better place. I really do appreciate the mentoring and everything that you've been doing for all the years that you have. So thank you very much.
Pat, thank you. And I just want to encourage you on your journey. Wasn't that long ago that I was your age with kids in your stage. And this is the greatest thing you'll ever do with your life. So keep getting after it, Bo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So guys, if you haven't already, please, like, subscribe, and share this content. We appreciate the support, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And just always remember, you're stronger than you think you are. Stay resilient. Hey everyone, I really appreciate you listening to today's show. It means a lot to me that you are part of the journey and mission to help fathers be the best dads possible. I'd really appreciate it if you review the show and share it with someone you genuinely believe could benefit from this content. Please visit resilientdad.com for more content and resources as we build this community for dads everywhere.